This is Lady Boulay, and welcome back to Black American Lineage. Thank you so much for supporting this channel. I enjoy reading your comments, so thank you for the feedback. Today is going to be another one of those topics where somebody's going to get mad because lies have been told in America, and when you try to go back and correct the lies or bring new information, then people start gaslighting you and saying all sorts of ugly little things. But when you've hidden the truth and it comes out, and it will come out, then there are those who will get upset about it. So buckle up and let's get ready for this revelation. And today's revelation is that the first cowboys in America were black. I didn't make this up. The information that I'm going to share came from the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and it was published in September 2023, so 2 months ago. And this headline says, America's first cowboys were enslaved Africans, ancient cow DNA suggests. So the article reads, think cowboy, and you might picture John Wayne riding herd across the United States West. But the first cowboys lived in Mexico and the Caribbean, and most of them were black. So first of all, the first cowboys didn't even live in the United States. They lived in Mexico and the Caribbean. And believe it or not, I have heard Mexicans say that they were the first cowboys, and I didn't really pay any attention to it. But this article bears them out. It says that's the conclusion of a recent analysis of DNA from 400-year-old cow bones excavated on the island of Hispaniola and at sites in Mexico. The work, published in Scientific Reports, also provides evidence that African cattle made it to the Americas at least a century earlier than historians realized. Well, they realized it, they just probably just gonna lie about it. The timing of these African imports, meaning the cows, to the early 1600s suggests the growth of cattle herds may have been connected to the slave trade, says study author Nicholas DeSalle, an archaeozoologist at the Florida Museum of Natural History. It changes the whole perspective of the mythical figure of the cowboy, which has been whitewashed over the 20th century. The first cattle in the Americas came from Spain, brought by Christopher Columbus to the island of Hispaniola on his second voyage in 1493. More came in subsequent voyages in the early 1500s. The vast herds that later spread across the Americas, historians have assumed descended from this small founding population of about 500 cows. To understand the spread of cattle, Del Sol scoured museum collections for cattle bones from post-contact Hispaniola and Mexico. The authors compared genetic signatures in the DNA from 21 cows found at early Spanish sites in Mexico and Haiti to known European and African breeds. During the first century of European colonization, most cow bones correspond with varieties known from Spain, but one bone from the grounds of an early Franciscan convent in the heart of modern-day Mexico City called Bella Artes yielded DNA matching a breed of cattle found only in Africa. The arrival of African cattle, meanwhile, coincides with a darker development. Until Europeans arrived, the region's indigenous population had no experience with large domesticated animals such as cows, pigs, or sheep, mainstays of the colonial era diet. As Spanish and Portuguese cattle herds in the New World grew, ranchers needed trained, skilled workers, and African ranchers were more knowledgeable about raising cattle in tropical environments, Del Sol says. Now we have different lines of evidence that connect African ranchers and Spanish colonies. Now, the key words in that paragraph are African ranchers were more knowledgeable about raising cattle in tropical environments. In the early 1600s, historical records show slave traders targeted African groups familiar with cattle herding, like the Fulani of modern-day Cameroon. And we know that the Fulani was one of the tribes that was attacked and brought into captivity on slave ships to the United States. The new study shows at least one cow was brought directly from the region at the same time, suggesting herders and their cattle might have come as sort of a package. So this is all about the pillaging of Africa. So now what they're saying is they went into that area where the Africans were good cattle herders, stole the Africans and the cattle. You can't make this stuff up. So they go on to talk about where the first cows came from that came to the United States. And they did a lot of discussion about that. One of the researchers says that what they discovered should help shift a fundamental misconception about the origins of the iconic American figure, the cowboy. Innovations like herding cattle from horseback and the lasso appeared first in the Americas at the time when most cowboys were enslaved Africans, spreading to Europe only later. It's debunking the idea enslaved Africans were simply the workers, the brawn, not the brains, Sluter says. They created a lot of novel techniques. Okay, so this is what he's saying. The first cows came from Africa, and the people who came and did the work with the cows that made them into cowboys were Africans. So this whole thing about all these white cowboys on TV is a Hollywood invention that was hard work and people had to know what they were doing. When he was a boy, during season, Larry Callis and his dad would go to rodeos around his Texas hometown every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And on Sunday, he'd go to a special segregated rodeo to watch his real heroes, black cowboys. Black cowboys have long been a part of the culture of the American West, though you wouldn't know that if your knowledge of cowboys stems mainly from movie westerns. The real-life truth that after the Civil War, when the Wild West began to flourish, somewhere around 25% of all cowboys were black. Some historians claim the number is even higher than that. To which Larry Callis, who runs the Black Cowboy Museum in Rosenberg, Texas, simply laughs. In the 1830s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, there was nothing but black cowboys, Callis says. You want to know why? In Texas, cowboy was a slave name. The white man didn't want to work horses and work cows. He refused to be called a cowboy. He wanted to be called a cowhand or a cowpuncher. Until people started hearing about the cowboys back east, and they didn't know they were black. And they got famous. And then all of a sudden, the white cowboys started saying, "Hey, I'm a cowboy." I don't find that hard to believe. Clearly, the life of a black cowboy wasn't as glamorous as the white westerns portrayed it. Not only were long days and nights away from home common, black cowboys also faced discrimination economically and socially, just as blacks did in much of the rest of the country. Ironically, some of the earliest black cowboys, still slaves, were not allowed to take on the dangerous job of taming wild horses because they were too valuable as slaves. Being a successful black cowboy, Callis says, meant constantly proving your worth, getting cattle out of the trees and back to the herd, roping strays, putting up with the long hours in the worst of conditions. You worked 24 hours a day. You worked all night. In the 1860s, they didn't have fences. They didn't have barbed wire. You had to sit out all night long and watch the herd. Does that sound like something that white people would do when there were black people around to do it? Because as he points out, it was not a glamorous job. Run-ins with Native Americans happened too, and an occasional gunfight in a saloon was known to occur. Overall, the life of a black cowboy in the Old West was not unlike that of any cowboy you'd see in a standard movie western. I guess the difference would be that the real cowboys, the black ones, experience discrimination and prejudice and everything else, whereas the white cowboy was always the hero. There's a lot of information out here about these black cowboys, and the story that they tell is very convincing that they were the first cowboys because the work they were doing was hard work. It wasn't glamorous. Hollywood made it glamorous. Naturally, the black guys did it with flair, but it was hard work. The original cowboys were black, and the reason that's believable is because it is true. White people didn't consider themselves boys. They called black men boys, but they didn't call themselves boys. They weren't referred to as boys. I found this very interesting, and I might do a deeper dive on this at a later date. But this was just another case of history in America being whitewashed, writing black people all of the way out of something that they had a main part in and giving it solely to white people. I don't really understand this. I don't understand why we can't share the history, and I don't understand why we can't tell the truth about things. I'm telling you, I just can't. Okay, so let me know what you think about this. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, share the video, and as always, have a great day.